All right. Good evening. Uh-oh, I can't talk. Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are. It depends. It's evening time here. Tonight we're going to read through chapter 25 of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. If this is your first time watching, we're not just going to read the words, we're going to talk about interesting or useful words that you probably don't know. And if you're watching this live with me, then I would really appreciate it if you make comments or ask questions as we're reading. Don't think that you're interrupting me. The thing that makes it interesting is when you ask questions, when you want to know about a word or a phrase or something that you don't understand. If you don't ask questions, then, well, I'll just stop and explain words I think you probably don't know, or words that I think might be useful for you. But definitely make comments. You're not interrupting me. I want you to. All right. Now, in the previous chapter, Davy is now an adult. He's in London. He's studying for a career as a lawyer. And this is his first time being independent. He has his own apartment, and he just invited some friends over, and they got really drunk and decided to go to the theater. And they were so drunk that they were making a scene, a commotion, a fuss in the theater. And it happens that one of Davy's very close friends was in the same theater right next to him. And he embarrassed her very badly. So, and then he went home, he went back to his apartment and passed out. And he woke up the next morning thinking, oh God, what did I do? So that's where we are now. And this is chapter 25, Good and Bad Angels. We've got Recuerdos says good evening. Good evening, Recuerdos. How are you? Oh, he's asking about my coffee. Where's my coffee? I'm just drinking tea right now because it's so late. I'm going to go to sleep after I read this. I won't be able to sleep if I drink coffee. And Still Waters is here. Hi, Still Waters. Long time no see. All right. Well, let's start reading about the good and bad angels. I was going out at my door in the morning after that deplorable day of headache. Deplorable to me just means horrible, but I wonder if there's some other thing about this word. Let's see. I just want to see how Google will define deplorable. Deserving strong condemnation. Shocking bad in quality. Shockingly bad in quality. Deplorable. It's like horrible. Okay, so I was going out at my door on the morning after that deplorable day of headache, sickness, and repentance. So repenting is when you've done something bad and you feel bad about it. And you want to try to get forgiveness or something like that. Yes, I remember that you were... I saw you earlier today, Still Waters. Thank you for watching again. Let's see. Okay, so repenting is, oh, I'm so horrible. I'm so sorry for the horrible things that I did. That's repenting. So he had a day of headache, sickness, and repentance. Oh, what did I do? I'm so horrible. With an odd confusion in my mind relative to the date of my dinner party, as if a body of titans are giants, had taken an enormous lever and pushed the day before yesterday, some months back. When I saw a ticket porter coming upstairs with a letter in his hand, he was taking his time about his errand. You know, a lot of people don't know this word errand, but errands, do you know what a chore is? Have you seen that word before? Chore. Your chores are the work that you do around the house. So doing your laundry or vacuuming or mopping, those are chores. Those are the daily things that you have to do in your home. And an errand are the daily things, the everyday daily things that you have to do outside of your home. So paying bills. If you go out, well, people don't go out to pay bills. They do everything online now. But maybe going grocery shopping is an errand, or going to the post office to pick up a package is an errand. So running errands is you do chores at home and you run errands outside of the home. So in this case, it just means like task. So somebody is coming up the stairs like a delivery boy with a letter. That's his errand. That's his job, his task. He was taking his time about his errand, so he was taking a long time doing his job. But when he saw me on the top of the staircase looking at him over the banisters, it's possible that you don't know this word banister. So I'm just going to show you what a banister is. Let's just take a look at this picture. This is the banister. So these are all the different names. I didn't know that these things were called a baluster or a balustrade. But I did know banister. I've just improved my stairs vocabulary. Whoops. Closed the wrong window. Let me put that back up. Oh no, why is it blurry? Something happened. Let me make a change here. Okay, that's better. All right. What happened? Okay. All right. So he was taking his time about his errand. He was taking a long time to do his task, his job. But when he saw me at the top of the staircase, looking at him over the banister, so Davy's looking over the banister, and he sees a delivery boy coming up with a letter. He swung himself into a trot. Trotting is a type of walking. Let's see if I can find an animation of a trot. It's the kind of walking that a horse does. This is kind of a trot. So that's usually used when talking about horses. My dog, Gizmo, when he's very happy, he likes to trot. It's kind of a happy, quick walk. It's kind of cute. So he was walking very slowly, but then when he saw that Davy was waiting for him over the banister, he started walking pretty fast, like a trot. And came up panting. Panting is as if he had run himself into a state of exhaustion. T. Copperfield, Esquire, said the ticket porter, touching his hat with his little cane. I could scarcely lay claim to the name. I was so disturbed by the conviction that the letter came from Agnes. However, I told him I was T. Copperfield, Esquire, and he believed it, and gave me the letter, which he said required an answer. I shut him out of the landing to wait for the answer, and went into my chambers again, in such a nervous state that I was fain to lay the letter down on my breakfast table and familiarize myself with the outside of it a little before I resolved to break the seal. So he's worried. Agnes is the girl that he embarrassed at the theater the night before, and he thinks this must be a letter from Agnes, and he's afraid to open it. I found when I did open it that it was a very kind note containing no reference to my condition at the theater. All it said was, "My dear Trotwood, I am staying at the house of Papa's agent, Mr. Waterbrook, in Ely Place, Holborn. Will you come to see me today at any time you like to appoint? Ever yours affectionately, Agnes. Let's see. Stillwater says, could I please ask a question about how should I address politely? I'm not sure what you're asking. Address what, or in what situation? Go ahead and write your question. It's no problem. But I'm not really sure what you're asking. Can you try to be a little bit more specific? It took me such a long time to write an answer at all, to my satisfaction, that I don't know what the ticket porter can have thought, unless he thought I was learning to write. I must have written half a dozen answers at least. I began one. How can I ever hope, my dear Agnes, to efface from your remembrance the disgusting impression? There, I didn't like it. And then I tore it up. So, to tear something is to do this. But when you have the phrasal verb tear up, that's when you take something and you do it many times. Like that. This is tearing something up. Making a mess. I didn't like it, so I tore it up. And I began another. Shakespeare has observed, my dear Agnes, how strange it is that a man should put an enemy into his mouth. That reminded me of Markham, and it got me no further. I even tried poetry. I began one note in a 6-syllable line. Oh, do not remember, but that associated itself with the 5th of November, and it became an absurdity. After many attempts, I wrote, my dear Agnes, your letter is like you, and what can I say of it that would be higher praise than that? I will come at 4 o'clock, affectionately and sorrowfully. T.C. And with this missive, which I was in 20 minds at once about recalling, as soon as it was out of my hands, the ticket porter at last departed. Expect for calling some... so Stillwaters was asking about addressing people politely. Except for calling someone sir or ma'am, what would you like us to call you politely? Well, you could just call me Ryan. That would be fine with me. And yeah, sir, it's very formal. It's so formal that I think it's better if you just call me Ryan. Call me by my name. If the day were half as tremendous to any other professional gentleman in Doctors' Commons as it was to me, I sincerely believe he made some explanation for his share in that rotten old ecclesiastical cheese. Oh, this is a very strange sentence. So he gives the letter to the porter. A porter is someone who carries things. To port something means to carry something. If the day were as half... this is a very strange sentence. I have to read it again. If the day were half as tremendous to any other professional gentleman in Doctors' Commons as it was to me, I sincerely believe he would have made some expiation for his share in that rotten old ecclesiastical cheese. Okay, I just don't understand that sentence. Sorry. Although I left the office at 3:30 and was prowling about the place of appointment within a few minutes afterwards, the appointment time was exceeded by a full quarter of an hour, according to the clock of St. Andrew's, Holborn, before I could muster up sufficient desperation. When you muster something, it means like finding it, like gathering it. Like it's hard for you to find it inside of yourself. So maybe if you have a very long day, you have to muster energy or strength to go to the store after a long day. You have to find the strength inside of you to do something more. If you're in a situation where you're scared, you have to muster courage. You have to find the courage inside of you. It's in there somewhere hidden, and you have to muster it. You have to gather it from inside of yourself. And what was Davy mustering here? He was mustering desperation. He was afraid to ring the bell of the house because he was afraid to confront Agnes after he embarrassed her. And led into the left-hand doorpost of Mr. Waterbrook's house. The professional business of Mr. Waterbrook's establishment was done on the ground floor, and the genteel business, of which there was a good deal, of the upper part of the building. I was shown into a pretty but rather close drawing room, and there sat Agnes netting a purse. Hi, Wellington Cardoso. You say turn in Hulk, but I'm not sure what do you mean by that? Turn in Hulk. I'm not sure what that means. Is that something that you thought I said, or are you? Can you just explain that a little bit more? She looked so quiet and good, and reminded me so strongly of my airy, fresh school days at Canterbury, and the sodden, smoky, stupid wretch I had been the other night, that nobody being by, I yielded to my self-reproach and shame. In short, made a fool of myself. I cannot deny that I shed tears. So to shed something, in this case it means that he made the tears. You usually use the word shed for that, but let's just take a look at the word shed for a minute as a verb, because shed can be a noun, which is very different. But if you are familiar with a snake, then you know that a snake sheds its skin. The skin comes off. And dogs, dogs are always losing their hair. We call that shedding. So it's when something comes off of you, shedding. You can use it in that way. So shedding tears. The tears come out. Oh, Stillwater says, thank you for telling me that. We don't call people's first name in my culture unless you know each other. We usually call someone Mr., Miss plus last name. Well, you can do that, but it just seems so formal that, especially in Canada, I think a lot of people, well, they would think it's nice, but it's a little bit uncomfortable, and people like it when you call them by their first name. Let's see, where did I stop? Where was shed? I cannot deny that I shed tears. To this hour, I am undecided whether it was upon the whole the wisest thing I could have done, or the most ridiculous. If it had been anyone but you, Agnes, said I, turning away my head, I should not have minded it half so much. But that it should have been you who saw me, I almost wish I had been dead first. She put her hand, its touch was like no other hand, upon my arm for a moment, and I felt so befriended and comforted that I could not help moving it to my lips and gratefully kissing it. Sit down, said Agnes cheerfully. Don't be unhappy, Trotwood. If you cannot confidently trust me, whom will you trust? Oh, Agnes, I returned, you are my good angel. She smiled rather sadly, I thought, and shook her head. Yes, Agnes, my good angel, always my good angel. If I were indeed Trotwood, she returned, there is one thing that I should set my heart on very much. I looked at her inquiringly. So when you inquire, you're making a question. So if you're looking at someone inquiringly, it's like I don't think I can do it. having a question on your face. Like, tell me more. What are you talking about? But already with foreknowledge of her meaning. You know, when you put that word for in the front of certain words, for always means in front, before, forward. That word for has something to do with the front. Foresee means seeing into the future, seeing into the front. Forecast is predicting the future. And this is foreknowledge. That means knew before. "On warning you," said Agnes, with a steady glance, "against your bad angel." "My dear Agnes," I began, "if you mean Steerforth—" "I do, Trotwood," she returned. "Then, Agnes, you wrong him very much. He, my bad angel, or anyone's? He, anything but a guide, a support, a friend to me? My dear Agnes, now is it not unjust and unlike you to judge him from what you saw from me the other night?" "I do not judge him from what I saw of you the other night," she quietly replied. "From what then?" "From many things. Trifles in themselves." Trifle means like little things. So she's saying, I know that he's bad from little things, trifles. But they do not seem to me to be so when they're put together. So she's saying, I've seen a lot of little bad things that he does, and if you put them together, he seems to be a bad person. "I judge him partly from your account of him, Trotwood, and your character and the influence he has over you." There was always something in her modest voice that seemed to touch a chord within me, answering to that sound alone. It was always earnest. Earnest maybe means like desperate here. Let's just check the meaning. Intense or serious state of mind. Grave, important, earnestness. So, serious. But I think a little bit of desperation, too. Let's reread that. There was always something in her modest voice that seemed to touch a chord with me. You know, to touch a chord... Did you know that if you play the string of an instrument and there are other instruments in the room with strings, those other instruments will also vibrate. So that's kind of like striking a chord. It's like resonate. It's like a connection. So if somebody... Actually, that's a really interesting phrase. I'm going to write that down. I have to make a video about that one, I think. So if someone strikes a chord with you, it means they said something that made like a connection with you. They got your attention. There was always something in her modest voice that seemed to touch a chord with me. So every time she speaks, it touches him, it vibrates with him somehow. It makes a connection with him somehow. Answering to that sound alone. It was always earnest, so it was always serious. But when it was very earnest, as it was now, there was a thrill in it that quite subdued me, made me calm. I sat looking at her as she cast her eyes down on her work. Sat seeming still to listen to her, and Steerforth, in spite of all of my attachment to him, darkened in that tone. So just from her tone, and just from being with her, even though he loves Steerforth, he was willing to listen to what she had to say, or willing to be open-minded about what she had to say. "It is very bold in me," said Agnes, looking up again, who have lived in such seclusion and can know so little of the world, to give you my advice so confidently, or even to have this strong opinion. But I know in what it is engendered, Trotwood, and how true a remembrance of our having grown up together, and how true an interest in all relating to you. It is that which makes me bold. Bold is another word for brave. I am certain that what I say is right. I'm quite sure it is. I feel as if it were someone else speaking to you and not I, when I caution you that you have made a dangerous friend. So she's saying, I don't have a lot of experience in the world. That's what she means by a secluded life. So her life has just been spent at home and not really going out and meeting a lot of different people. So she's saying, maybe I'm very inexperienced, but I just know that he's a bad person. Again I looked at her. Again I listened to her after she was silent. And again his image, though it was still fixed in my heart, darkened. So he's starting to get a bad feeling about Steerforth, just from her and her intuition. I'm not so unreasonable as to expect, said Agnes, resuming her usual tone after a little while, that you will, or that you can at once, change any sentiment that has become a conviction to you. A conviction, if you have a conviction, it's a very strong belief. So Agnes is saying, I know that you're very attached to him, and it's a conviction. It's a very strong belief that you have that he's a great guy. Least of all, a sentiment that is rooted in your trusting disposition. Disposition means like your character, your personality. So Davy has a very trusting character, a very trusting personality. You ought not hastily to do that. I only ask you, Trotwood, if you ever think of me, I mean, with a quiet smile, for I was going to interrupt her, and she knew why, as often as you think of me, to think of what I have said. Do you forgive me for all of this? I will forgive you, Agnes, I replied, when you come to do Steerforth justice and to like him as well as I do. So Davy is saying, I will forgive you when you get to know Steerforth well enough, and then you understand how wonderful he is. Not until then, said Agnes. I saw a passing shadow on her face when I made mention of him, but she returned my smile, and we were again as unreserved in our mutual confidence as of old. And when, Agnes, said I, will you forgive me the other night? When I recall it, said Agnes. She would have dismissed the subject so, but I was too full of it to allow that, and insisted on telling her how it happened, and that I had disgraced myself, and what chain of accidental circumstances had had the theatre for its final link. It was a great relief to me to do this, and to enlarge on the obligation that I owed to Steerforth for his care of me when I was unable to take care of myself. You must not forget, said Agnes, calmly changing the conversation as soon as I had concluded, that you are always to tell me, not only when you fall in trouble, but when you fall in love. Who has succeeded to Miss Larkins, Trotwood? So when Davy turned 17, he was invited to a party, his first adult party, and at that party he fell in love with an older woman and became obsessed with her. But then she actually married a very old man and broke his heart, and that's Miss Larkins. So she's saying, who took the place of Miss Larkins? Who are you in love with now? No one, Agnes. Someone, Trotwood, said Agnes, laughing and holding up her finger. No, Agnes, upon my word. Oh, people don't really talk like that anymore, but that means I promise you. No, Agnes, I swear, I promise. That's how you would say it now. Like, I'm telling you the truth. I swear. I promise. There is a lady, certainly, at Mrs. Steerforth's house, who is very clever, and whom I like to talk to, Miss Dartle, but I don't adore her. Agnes laughed at her own penetration, and told me that if I were faithful to her in my confidence, that means if I always tell her my secrets, she thought that she should keep a little register of my violent attachments with the date, duration, and termination of each, like the table of the reigns of the kings and queens in the history of England. Then she asked me if I had seen Uriah. Uriah Heep? Said I. No. Is he in London? He comes to the office downstairs every day, returned Agnes. He was in London a week before me. And I'm afraid on disagreeable business, Trotwood. Do you know I have a lamp in my bedroom of Uriah Heep? Somebody gave that to me as a present. I should take a picture of it and show it to you so you can imagine what Uriah Heep looks like. On some business that makes you uneasy, Agnes, said I. What can that be? Agnes laid aside her work and replied, folding her hands, one upon the other, and looking pensively at me. We've seen that word pensive before. Oh, Success Iotech on Rumble says hi. Hi, Success. Thanks for watching. Pensive means to think. So if you're pensive, that's like being lost in a thought. That's being pensive, like you're thinking about something. So Agnes laid aside her work. I have to be in the camera. Laid aside her work and replied, folding her hands upon one another and looking pensively at me out of those beautiful soft eyes of her. I believe he's going to enter into partnership with Papa. What? Uriah? That mean, fawning fellow worm himself into such a promotion? I cried indignantly. We had that word this morning. I was reading Brave New World this morning, and we had that word several times, indignant. That's like being angry because you're offended. Or being angry and thinking you're very right about something. So I can't believe it. Uriah's getting a promotion? Have you made no remonstrance about it, Agnes? Consider what a connection it is likely to be. You must speak out. To speak out means like to protest. Well, speak out could mean many different things. That's the problem with phrasal verbs. Sometimes they mean 3 or 4 different things. And one thing about speak out means like to say something in protest. So you must speak out. You must protest this. You must not allow your father to take such a mad step. Mad here means crazy. You must prevent it, Agnes, while there's time. Still looking at me, Agnes shook her head while I was speaking, with a faint smile at my warmth. Faint means weak. So, if you have your telephone, where I live, it's almost impossible for me to get a cellular signal. Sometimes I can get just a little weak signal if I go stand in the right place and hold the phone up to the sky. I get a faint signal, a weak signal. So she had a faint smile, a very soft, weak smile. You remember our last conversation about Papa? It was not long after that, not more than 2 or 3 days, when he gave me the first intimation of what I tell you. It was sad to see him struggling between his desire to represent it to me as a matter of choice on his part, and his inability to conceal that it was forced upon him. I felt very sorry. So her father is promoting Uriah Heep. Uriah's a horrible, creepy guy. And Davy's saying, no, you have to protest. You have to tell him, no, he can't do that. But then Agnes is explaining, well, he told me the other day, and he was trying to make it sound like a wonderful idea, but it was obvious that for some reason he was being forced or pressured to do this. So really he has no choice. For some mysterious reason we don't know, he has to give Uriah Heep this promotion. Forced upon him, Agnes? Who forces it upon him? Uriah, she replied, after a moment's hesitation, has made himself indispensable to Papa. Indispensable means you can't live without it. So she's saying somehow Uriah has managed to take over the business in a way where if he were fired or made to go away, maybe the business would fail. Uriah has made himself indispensable to Papa. So the father can't do the work without him anymore. He is subtle and watchful. He has mastered Papa's weaknesses, fostered them. To foster something means to take care of something and help it grow. So Uriah saw her father's weaknesses and he took advantage of those. He helped them grow and become bigger. Her father likes to drink a lot of alcohol. Maybe that's part of it. But it could be other things too. Until, to say all that I mean, in a word, Trotwood, until Papa is afraid of him. So the father is afraid of Uriah. There was more that she might have said, more that she knew, or that she suspected, I clearly saw. I could not give her pain by asking what it was. So Davy knew there was more to the story, but he didn't want to force her to tell him and make her feel bad. For I knew that she withheld it from me to spare her father. It had long been going on to this. I was sensible. Yes, I could not but feel, on the least reflection, that it had been going on for a long time. I remained silent. His ascendancy over Papa, maybe you know the word descend. Descend means going down, like you descend the stairs, you descend a ladder, that means going down. And ascend means going up. So his ascendancy over Papa, his rising up over her father. Wellington Cardoso is asking, could foster be increased? No, foster does not mean increase. Foster means taking care of something and feeding it and helping it to grow. So the main idea here is taking care of something, and you could foster an animal. You take care of an animal, you help it grow. You could foster a child. Take care of a child, help it grow. It grows, but that's not the main idea. The main idea is that you're giving it, you're feeding it, and you're loving it, and you're caring for it. That's really the idea of foster. But as a result of your love and your care, it gets bigger. He professes humility and gratitude, with truth, perhaps, I hope so, but his position is really one of power, and I fear he makes a hard use of his power. I said he was a hound. Hound is another word for dog. I said he was a hound, which at the moment was a great satisfaction to me. At the time I speak of, as the time when Papa spoke to me, pursued Agnes, he had told Papa that he was going away, and he was very sorry and unwilling to leave, but that he had better prospects. So Uriah went to her father and said, I'm quitting. I have a better offer somewhere. Papa was very much depressed then, and more bowed down by care than ever you or I have seen him. So he was very worried when Uriah said that he was quitting. So I think what happened was Uriah had maybe taken on all the responsibility of her father's office. And now Uriah knows everything about the business, and maybe the father has not taken care of the business so well. So if Uriah leaves, the business is finished. So the father seemed very worried. Papa was very much depressed then, and more bowed down by care than you or I have ever seen him. But he seemed relieved by this expedient of the partnership, though at the same time he seemed hurt by it and ashamed of it. And how did you receive it, Agnes? I did, Trotwood, she replied, what I hope was right, feeling sure that it was necessary for Papa's peace that the sacrifice should be made. I entreated him to make it. Entreating means like begging. So I said, oh, please do it. Please do it. I said it would lighten the load of his life. I hope it will. And that it would give me an increased opportunities of being his companion. Oh, Trotwood, cried Agnes, putting her hands before her face as her tears started on it. I almost feel as if I had been Papa's enemy, instead of his loving child, for I know how he has altered in his devotion to me. I know how he has narrowed the circle of his sympathies and duties in the concentration of his whole mind upon me. I know what a multitude of things he has shut out for my sake, and how his anxious thoughts of me have shadowed his life, and weakened his strength and energy by turning them always upon one idea. If I could ever set this right, if I could ever work out his restoration, as I have so innocently been the cause of his decline. So she's feeling guilty because she actually encouraged it. She said, give Uriah this promotion, then you could spend more time with me and you could relax a little bit more. And now she's thinking, oh, that was so stupid. How do I fix this? I had never before seen Agnes cry. I had seen tears in her eyes when I had brought new honors home from school, and I had seen them there when we last spoke about her father, and I had seen her turn her gentle head aside when we took leave of one another. That means say goodbye. But I had never seen her grieve like this. It made me so sorry. So he's saying, I've seen her cry, but for little reasons, like she's sad that I'm leaving, or crying for happiness when something good happens. But this time was different. This was very serious. He'd never seen that before. It made me sorry that I could only say in a foolish, helpless manner, pray, Agnes, don't, my dear sister. But Agnes was too superior to me in character and purpose, and I know well now, whatever I might know or not know, to be long in need of my entreaties. The beautiful, calm manner, which makes her so different in my remembrance from everybody else, came back again, as if a cloud had passed from a serene sky. Serene means calm, or calming. We are not likely to remain alone much longer, said Agnes, and while I have an opportunity, let me earnestly entreat you. We keep seeing that word entreat. It's like beg. Please do this. Let me entreat you. Let me beg from you, Trotwood. Be friendly to Uriah. So she's saying, please be kind to Uriah when he comes. Don't repel him. Don't resent, as I think you have a general disposition to do, what may be uncongenial. Uncongenial means like unfriendly or impolite to you and him. He may not deserve it, for we know no certain ill of him. In any case, think first of Papa and me. So she's saying, be nice to him. Anyway, we just don't like him because he's weird. He's creepy. He's a very creepy person, a very strange person. But actually, nobody has ever seen him do anything wrong or bad. That's what she means by we know no certain ill of him. Ill means bad. We know of no certain bad thing that he did. Agnes had no time to say more, for the room door opened, and Mr. Waterbrook, and Mrs. Waterbrook, who was a large lady, or who wore a large dress. I don't know exactly which, for I don't know which was dress and which was lady. So back then, the ladies used to wear very, very big dresses, and he's saying, I don't know if she was fat or she just had a very big dress. I don't know where the woman started and the dress ended, or where the woman ended and the dress started. Came sailing in. I had a dim recollection of having seen her at the theater, as if I had seen her in a pale magic lantern. But she appeared to remember me perfectly, and still to suspect me of being in a state of intoxication. So she was there when Davy went to the theater and he was really drunk, acting stupid with his friends. Agnes forgave him because they're very good friends. But he doesn't know this lady, and so the lady is looking at him like, yeah, I remember you. I remember the big scene that you caused in the theater. And he says, she's looking at me like she thinks I'm still drunk. Finding by degrees, however, that I was sober means not drunk, and I hope that I was a modest young gentleman, Mrs. Waterbrook softened towards me considerably and inquired, firstly, if I went much into the parks, and secondly, if I went much into society. On my replying to both these questions in the negative, it occurred to me that I fell again in her good opinion. But she concealed the fact gracefully and invited me to dinner the next day. I accepted the invitation and took my leave, making a call on Uriah in the office as I went out. To make a call on someone, you don't really use it that much anymore in this way, but it means to visit someone. So I visited Uriah in his office when I was leaving Agnes's house. I went out. As I went out and leaving a card for him in his absence. So Uriah wasn't in his office, so Davy left his card in Uriah's office. When I went to dinner the next day, on the street door being opened, plunged into a vapor bath of haunch of mutton. Okay, I think we've seen this word plunge before. Let me show you a picture of something. It's kind of a useful word in many different ways. But first I'm going to show you an item that you're probably familiar with. This is a plunger. So you've probably used one of those in your lifetime. And what do you do with a plunger? You go down really quickly. And that's what plunge means. Plunge means go down. Imagine you jump into a pool. You are plunging into the pool because you just go down very quickly. That's what plunge means. If you read graphs, let's see. Let's take a look at this. So if you look at this chart, if the line goes down very quickly, you can use plunge. Like the prices plunged, the stock plunged. It means going down, falling very quickly. Now let's go back to the book and see how it was used here. When I went to dinner the next day, and on the street door being opened, plunged into a vapor bath. Vapor means like smoke or air. Of haunch of mutton. Haunch. Haunch. Let's see. It's like a part of the leg of an animal. This is a haunch. So it's just a part of the leg of an animal. Haunch of mutton. Mutton is sheep. And just in case, let's look at sheep. These are sheep. Here's mutton. So just like when you eat cow, you don't say I'm eating cow. You say I'm eating beef. Or if you're eating pig, you don't say I'm eating pig. You say I'm eating pork. So there's a word for the animal, but then there's also a word for the food. So if you are eating mutton, that's the cooked sheep or cooked lamb. That's how you refer to sheep when you're eating them. You don't say I'm eating a sheep. If you say I'm eating a sheep, it sounds like you've got a live sheep, a live animal, and you're trying to eat it. Same with cow or pig. If you say I'm eating a cow, it sounds like you're in a field somewhere trying to bite an animal. So you have to say I'm eating beef, I'm eating pork, I'm eating mutton. So Davy is plunged into. So imagine that's like a pool he's jumping into. Suddenly, when the doors opened, he could smell the haunch of mutton. I divined that I was not the only guest. To divine something means to guess. So I guessed that I was not the only guest. For I immediately identified the ticket porter in disguise, assisting the family servant, and waiting at the foot of the stairs to carry up my name. So he recognized the porter who brought him the letter the other day, but this time he was wearing like a house uniform. So he was obviously going to serve, he was going to act as a servant for the dinner, like a waiter. He looked to the best of his ability when he asked me for it confidentially, as if he had never seen me before. But well did I know him, and well did he know me. Conscience made cowards of us both. Okay, I found Mr. Waterbrook to be a middle-aged gentleman with a short throat and a good deal of shirt collar, who only wanted a black nose to be the portrait of a pug dog. Okay, well, I guess we better take a look at a pug. I like pugs. I wanted a pug. This is a pug. So Davy is describing the owner of the house, Mr. I think his name was Waterbrook, and he's saying if he only had a black nose, he would look just like a pug dog. I've seen people like that. He told me he was happy to have the honor of making my acquaintance, and when I had paid my homage to Mrs. Waterbrook, presented me with much ceremony to a very awful lady in a black velvet dress and a great black velvet hat, whom I remember as looking like a near relation of Hamlet's, say his aunt. Mr. Henry Spiker was this lady's Mrs. Henry Spiker was this lady's name, and her husband was there too. So cold a man that his head, instead of being gray, seemed to be sprinkled with hoarfrost. So, sprinkle, well, maybe we'll look at a picture of sprinkles. Sprinkle. I wonder what kind of pictures we'll get with sprinkle. Well, I thought this would probably be the picture we would see the most. You know, if you have like donuts, they put those little things. But sprinkling is like this action. So if you're doing this and all the little things are falling, that's sprinkling. And what about a sprinkler? This is called a sprinkler. And that's because the water comes out in all the little bits. Those are sprinkles. Now wait, we should look at hoarfrost. I had to look up that word before. I've never heard that before. I mean, I know what frost is. It's a kind of ice. But I guess hoarfrost, which is a word I've never heard before, is this kind of frost. So it's a very specific kind of frost. I didn't know that frost had different names, but this is hoarfrost. It's kind of pretty. But Davy was saying it didn't look like he had hair. It looked like he had hoarfrost because he had a very cold look on his face. Mrs. Henry Spiker was this lady's name, and her husband was there too. So cold a man that his head, instead of being gray, the hair, seemed to be sprinkled with hoarfrost. Immense deference was shown to the Henry Spikers, male and female. So deference means like being very humble, like they're being treated like very important, and the other people are acting very low in front of them. So they must be very important people. Deference was shown to the Henry Spikers, male and female, which Agnes told me was on account of Mr. Henry Spiker being a solicitor to something or to somebody, I forget what or which, remotely connected with the Treasury. So he's just a lawyer, but maybe he has some very important clients. And so for that reason, they treat him with a lot of respect. I found Uriah Heep among the company in a suit of black and in deep humility. He told me when I shook hands with him that he was proud to be noticed by me and that he really felt obliged to me for my condescension. Oh, Stillwater says, how can I support you? Like, watch full ads. Oh, I don't make any money. Maybe one day I'll be able to make money on YouTube, but right now I don't qualify, so you can't do anything. Just watch, press the like button, make comments. That will help my channel grow. But thank you. I really appreciate that. He told me when I shook hands with him that he was proud to be noticed by me, and that he really felt obliged to me for my condescension. So to condescend to someone is to look down upon them. So this is why Uriah is such a creepy person, because he's always... I don't know a polite way to say this. There's this phrasal verb, kissing up. I don't know if you've ever heard kissing someone's ass. It's not a very nice thing to say, but it means like always flattering them, always saying nice things to them, and it's very fake. He's always doing that. So he's saying, thank you for condescending to remember me. Like, thank you for going down to my level and remembering me. You're so high up there and I'm so low down here. I could have wished he had been less obliged to me, for he hovered about me in his gratitude all the rest of the evening. So Davy was kind of wishing maybe to be left alone because Uriah all night was just telling him how wonderful he was. Hovering, which is a pretty... I wonder what kind of words we could... or what kind of pictures we could see with hovering. Hovering is like staying in the air, but not moving. So insects do that. Like insects have that ability to be flying, but not having to move. You know, like an airplane always has to be moving forward. But some, insects can just flap their wings and stay in the air in the same place, and that's hovering. It's like floating. Hummingbirds, if you know what a hummingbird is, hummingbirds can hover. Helicopters can hover. And the cursor, the arrow that you use with your mouse, you use the word hover for that. So if you're telling someone, giving them directions like hover over column A, hover over column B. That means move your mouse, move the little arrow, move your cursor to column A, move your cursor to column B. So you use hover for the internet all the time. But if somebody is hovering over you, that means like they're always standing over you. So it's very annoying if you've ever had someone standing over you, looking over you, maybe from behind. Let's see, how did they use it here? I could have wished that he had been less obliged to me, for he hovered about me in his gratitude all the rest of the evening. So he was just standing over him, saying nice things, like inappropriately nice things all night to him. And whenever I said a word to Agnes, was sure in his shadowless eyes and cadaverous face. A cadaver is a dead body, a dead human body. So if he has a cadaverous face, it means like his face looks like the face of a dead person. To be looking gauntly down upon us from behind. There were other guests, all iced for the occasion, as it struck me like the wine. But there was one who attracted my attention before he came in, on account of my hearing him announced as Mr. Traddles. My mind flew back to Salem House. And could it be Tommy, I thought, who used to draw the skeletons? So when Davy, the first school that Davy was sent away to was a horrible school. His father-in-law, his stepfather, sent him to that school just to get rid of him because his stepfather hated him. So he sent him to the cheapest, worst, horrible school he could find, where they used to abuse and beat the children. And Traddles was one of the boys at this school. So was Steerforth. So Steerforth was one of the boys in that school, and also Traddles. And it seems like Traddles might be a guest at this dinner party. I looked for Mr. Traddles with unusual interest. He was a sober, steady-looking young man. So remember, if you're sober is the opposite of drunk, but it can also mean serious. So a sober-looking person is a person who looks very serious. Of retiring manners, with a comic head of hair, and eyes that were rather wide open. He got into an obscure corner so soon that I had some difficulty making him out. You know, to make something out is to see it separately from other things, to see it clearly among other things. So if if somebody says, "Oh, what's the number? What's the license plate number of that car?" And you look, you say, "I don't know. I can't make it out." You can see the license plate, but maybe it's too far away, so you can't actually read the numbers. You can't separate the numbers from the background. So Traddles went into a dark corner, and Davy really had to look to make him out, to separate him from the darkness, from the shadows and the other things that were around him, to see him clearly. He got into an obscure corner. Obscure means dark. And that I had some difficulty making him out. I see somebody over there, but I can't really see his face. I can just maybe see his shape. At length I had a good view of him, and either my vision deceived me, or it was the old, unfortunate Tommy. I made my way to Mr. Waterbrook, and said that I believed I had the pleasure of seeing an old schoolfellow there. "Indeed?" said Mr. Waterbrook, surprised. "You're too young to have been at school with Mr. Henry Spiker." "Oh, I don't mean him," I returned. "I mean the gentleman named Traddles." "Oh, aye. That word "I" is an old-fashioned word for yes. I think they still say it in Scotland sometimes, but I don't think that you hear it anywhere else, really. It just means yes. "Oh, aye, indeed," said my host, with much diminished interest. "Possibly. So if his interest is diminished, it went down. So suddenly when he mentioned Traddles, he's like, Traddles, whatever. He doesn't care. So I guess Traddles is not an important person here. If it's really the same person, said I, glancing towards him, it was a place called Salem House, where we were together, and he was an excellent fellow. Oh, yes, Traddles is a good fellow, returned my host, nodding. This is nodding. Oh, yes. Moving your head up and down. Oh, yes, Traddles is a good fellow, returned my host, nodding his head with an air of toleration. So it seems like he doesn't like Traddles, or he thinks he's a very unimportant person. Traddles is quite a good fellow. It's a curious coincidence, said I. It is really, returned my host, quite a coincidence that Traddles should be here at all, as Traddles was only invited this morning when the place at table intended to be occupied by Mrs. Henry Spiker's brother became vacant. In consequence of his indisposition, a very gentlemanly man, Mr. Henry Spiker's brother, Mr. Copperfield. I murmured an assent. So Traddles was not supposed to be there. Somebody else was supposed to be there, but he couldn't make it. So they just invited Traddles. I'm not sure how they know him. Maybe we'll find out in a minute. But they just invited him to fill an empty seat at the table. I murmured an assent, which was full of feeling. Considering that I knew nothing at all about him, and I inquired what Mr. Traddles was by profession. Traddles, returned Mr. Waterbrook, is a young man reading for the bar. That means he's becoming a lawyer. Yes, he is quite a good fellow. Nobody's enemy but his own. Is he his own enemy? Said I, sorry to hear this. Well, returned Mr. Waterbrook, pursing his mouth. This is pursing your mouth. So he said, well, maybe he was thinking about what to say. And playing with his watch chain in a comfortable, prosperous sort of way, I should say he was one of those men who stand in their own light. Yes, I should say he would never, for example, be worth £500. Traddles was recommended to me by a professional friend. Oh, yes, he has a kind of talent for drawing briefs and stating a case in writing plainly. I am able to throw something in Traddles' way in the course of the year. Something, for him, considerable. Oh, yes. I was much impressed by the extremely comfortable and satisfied manner in which Mr. Waterbrook delivered himself of this little word, yes. Every now and then. There was a wonderful expression in it. It completely conveyed the idea of a man who had been born, not to say with a silver spoon, but with a scaling ladder, and had gone on mounting all the heights of life, one after another, until he now looked from the top of the fortifications with the eye of a philosopher and a patron on the people down in the trenches. Oh, gosh. Okay. If you are born with a silver spoon in your mouth, that's an expression, and that means that you were born into a very rich family. And you never really had to work or do anything. And Davy is saying, I would not say that Mr. Waterbrook was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. I would say that, what did he say here? A scaling ladder. So he was born with a ladder going as high as possible, all the heights of life, one after another, until he now looked from the top of a giant castle with the eye of a philosopher and a patron. So Mr. Waterbrook, I don't know how rich he is, but he has an attitude, or he gives this feeling like he's above everything else, but in a glorious way, not in a mean way or a horrible way. My reflection on this theme were still in progress when dinner was announced. So Davy was still thinking about that. Mr. Waterbrook went down with Hamlet's aunt. Mr. Henry Spiker took Mrs. Waterbrook, Agnes, whom I should have liked to take myself, was given to a simpering fellow with weak legs. Uriah, Traddles, and I, as the junior part of the company, went down last. How we could, I went down last. How we could. I was not so vexed. Vexed means like annoyed. I was not so vexed at losing Agnes that I might have been, since it gave me an opportunity of making myself known to Traddles on the stairs, who greeted me with a great fervor. While Uriah writhed, remember, writhing is the moving of a snake. So Davy is comparing Uriah to a snake. While Uriah writhed with such obtrusive satisfaction and self-abasement that I could gladly have pitched him over the banisters. So Uriah is so annoying that Davy wanted to push him down the stairs. Traddles and I were separated at the table, being billeted in two remote corners. He in the glare of a red velvet lady, I in the gloom of Hamlet's aunt. The dinner was very long, and the conversation was about the aristocracy. That would be like the kings and queens and lords and ladies and earls, the whole royal family. And the somewhat lower people. So our conversation was about the aristocracy and blood. So what they mean by blood is maybe talking about this person is related to that person, and this person is descended from that person. That's what they mean by talking about. The conversation was about blood. Who is related to who in the aristocracy? Mrs. Waterbrook repeatedly told us that if she had a weakness, it was blood. It occurred to me several times that we should have got on better, getting along, being good friends, if we had not been quite so genteel. Genteel, we keep seeing that word. That just means like very polite, very formal. We were so exceedingly genteel that our scope was very limited. So we were being so formal at this dinner that the types of conversations that we were allowed to have were very limited to only very specific topics. A Mr. and Mrs. Gulpage were of the party who had something to do at second hand, at least Mr. Gulpage had, with a law business of the bank. And with the bank and with the Treasury, we were as exclusive as the court circular. So these people, these lawyers, it seems like they're all lawyers, and they all have connections to very powerful people and institutions. So it's kind of a little bit impressive for Davy. To mend that matter, we had that word mend earlier today, but I think it's a good word. So let's just take a look at what mend means. Mending is what you do to fix clothing. So look, this person is mending some clothes, fixing some clothes. This is how you mend something, like you fix a hole. But sometimes you could use mend just to mean fix. I mean, it really means this. It really means like fixing clothes, mending. But sometimes you could use it to talk about fixing a relationship or fixing a problem. Not a car. You wouldn't mend a car. That would sound like you're doing this. But, mending a problem would mean like finding a solution to a problem. And so Davy is saying let's see how they're using it. To mend the matter, Hamlet's aunt had the family failing of indulging in soliloquy and held forth in a desultory manner by herself on every topic that was introduced. Well, that's a crazy sentence. To mend the matter, to fix the problem. Hamlet's aunt, so this is a strange lady wearing a strange costume or Davy thinks it's strange, and he's nicknamed her Hamlet's aunt. Had the family failing of indulging in soliloquy. A soliloquy is maybe you know the word solo, which means only or alone or one. And a soliloquy is a speech. It's not a conversation. It's one person talking. And indulging in a soliloquy means it would mean like permitting this person to speak without interrupting them, just letting them talk while everybody listened. But I'm not sure how they're using failing here. That's a little bit weird for me. Hamlet's aunt had the family failing of indulging in soliloquy. So not permitting her to talk about everything and not letting anyone else talk, and held forth in a desultory, let's look up that word, desultory. I've already looked this word up, but I don't remember what it means. Lacking a plan, purpose, or enthusiasm. Let's see how it's used here. Held forth in a desultory manner by herself on every topic. So maybe she was just talking on every topic, and she wouldn't let anyone else talk. These were few enough, to be sure. But as we always fell back upon blood, she had a wide field for abstract speculation as her nephew himself. We might have been a party of ogres, the conversation assumed such a sanguine complexion. Sanguine means bloody. And ogres, let me show you a picture of an ogre. So the conversation was so much about blood. But really, blood means this person is related to that person, and that person is the father of this person. But he's saying we might as well have been ogres. Ogres, a type of monster. I guess like Shrek. Well, yeah, here's Shrek. Shrek is an ogre. So we might have been a party of ogres because we were talking about blood so much. I confess, I am of Mrs. Waterbrook's opinion, said Mr. Waterbrook, with his wine glass at his eye. Other things are all very well in their way, but give me blood. Oh, there's nothing, observed Hamlet's aunt, so satisfactory to one. There's nothing that is so much one's beau ideal of all that sort of thing, speaking generally. There are some low minds, not many, I'm happy to believe, but there are some that would prefer to do what I should call bow down before idols, positively idols, before service, intellect, and so on. But these are intangible points. Blood, so intangible means you can't touch them. Blood is not so. Blood is something physical. Blood is something real. But they're talking about heredity. They're not talking about red blood, but they're talking about who's related to who. Blood is not so. We see blood in a nose, and we know it. We meet it in a chin, and we say, there it is. That's blood. It's an actual matter of fact. We point it out. It admits of no doubt. The simpering fellow, with the weak legs, who had taken Agnes down, stated the question more decisively yet, I thought. Oh, you know. Deuce take it. Okay. I'm not really sure what that's supposed to mean. Deuce could be like a substitution swear word, like what the deuce? So that might be how they're meaning it here. I don't know. Let's see. Let's read the rest of it and see how that goes. Oh, you know, deuce take it, said the gentleman, looking round the board with an imbecile smile. An imbecile's an idiot. We can't forgo blood, you know. We must have blood, you know. Some young fellows, you know, may be a little behind in their station, perhaps, in point of education and behavior, and may go a little wrong, you know. and get themselves and other people into a variety of fixes and all that. But deuce take it. Yeah, so that's like saying, gosh darn it. That's how he's using it. You don't have to worry about it. It's not used in modern English. So that's like, but gosh darn it, it's delightful to reflect that they've got blood in them. Blood in them. Blood in them. Myself, I'd rather at any time be knocked down by a man who had got blood in him than I'd be picked up by a man who hadn't. So he's saying, I would rather be hit, I would rather be beaten by a man of a higher station with blood, meaning, royalty or something like that. I would rather somebody royal hit me than have a man with no blood, no connection to royalty pick me up. This sentiment, as compressing the general question into a nutshell, gave the utmost satisfaction and brought the gentlemen into great notice until the ladies retired. So what that means is until the ladies left the room. They were very impressed by that remark. They appreciated it. And he got a lot of attention until the ladies decided to leave the dining room. After that, I observed that Mr. Gulpidge and Mr. Henry Spiker, who had hitherto been very distant, entered into defensive alliance against us, the common enemy, and exchanged a mysterious dialogue across the table for our defeat and overthrow. That affair of the first bond for £4,500 had not taken the course that was expected, Spiker said to Gulpidge. So they're discussing business. And I think the younger guys on the other side of the table have no idea what they're talking about. Do you mean D of A's? Said Mr. Spiker. The C of B's? Said Mr. Gulpidge. Mr. Spiker raised his eyebrows like this. Mr. Spiker raised his eyebrows and looked much concerned. When the question was referred to Lord, I needn't name him, said Mr. Gulpidge, checking himself. Oh, I understand, said Mr. Spiker. N. They're talking in code. Mr. Gulpidge darkly nodded. Was referred to him. His answer was, money or no release? Don't worry if you don't understand this. I think the whole point is you're not supposed to, because I don't know what they're saying. Nobody does. Lord bless my soul, cried Mr. Spiker. Money or no release? Repeated Mr. Gulpidge firmly. The next in reversion. You understand me? K, said Mr. Spiker with an ominous look. Ominous means something horrible is about to happen. Right, let's check the definition of ominous. I don't trust my definition. Ominous. Ominous. Giving the impression that something bad or unpleasant is going to happen. Hey, that was pretty good. So, K, said Mr. Spiker with an ominous look. K. Something bad, something serious. K then positively refused to sign. He was attended at Newmarket for that purpose, and he point blank refused to do it. Point blank means directly. So he directly refused to do it. Mr. Spiker was so interested that he became quite stony. So, the matter rests at this hour, said Mr. Gulpidge, throwing himself back in his chair. Our friend Waterbrook will excuse me if I forbear to explain myself generally on account of the magnitude of the interests involved. So he's saying, please forgive me if I speak in very vague, unclear terms, because there's so many important people involved in our conversation. I can't be specific in front of these other people. Or in front of you, maybe even in front of Mr. Waterbrook. Mr. Waterbrook was only too happy. So they're really enjoying this because they feel so important. They deal with all of these important people. So they're really enjoying this little conversation. So Mr. Waterbrook was like, "Yeah, I understand." He's really excited. As it appeared to me to have such interest and such names even hinted at across the table, he assumed an expression of gloomy intelligence, though I am persuaded he knew no more about the discussion than I did. So Mr. Waterbrook looks very interested in everything that he's saying, but Davy thinks actually he probably understands as much as we do. Like, he really doesn't know what the other man is talking about. And highly approved of the discretion that had been observed, Mr. Spiker, after the receipt of such a confidence, naturally desired to favor his friend with a confidence of his own. Therefore the foregoing dialogue was succeeded by another in which it was Mr. Gulpage's turn to be surprised, and that by another in which the surprise came round to Mr. Spiker's turn again, and so on, turn and turn about. All this time, we, the outsiders, remained oppressed by the tremendous interests involved with the conversation, and our host regarded us with pride, as the victims of a salutary awe and astonishment. So they were really enjoying this conversation, but they were also enjoying having the conversation in front of these younger guys, because then they got to look like really important people. So they enjoyed having this audience of these younger guys there. I was very glad indeed to get upstairs to Agnes, and to talk with her in a corner, and to introduce Traddles to her, who was shy, but agreeable. Agreeable means friendly. And the same good-natured creature still. As he was obliged to leave early on account of, this phrase, we've had it before, on account of, it just means because of. It's another way of saying because of. So, because of going away the next morning for a month. So he had to leave early because in the morning he was going away on a trip. I had not nearly so much conversation with him as I could have wished, but we exchanged addresses and promised ourselves the pleasure of another meeting when he should come back to town. He was greatly interested to hear that I knew Steerforth, and spoke of him with such warmth that I made him tell Agnes what he thought of him. But Agnes only looked at me the while, and very slightly shook her head when only I observed. So Davy brings Traddles over to Agnes and says, "Go ahead, tell her about Steerforth. Tell her what a wonderful guy he is." So, of course, Traddles was saying that, but Agnes doesn't like him. So when nobody was looking, she looked at Davy and went... And when she was not among people with whom I believed she could be very much at home, to be at home means... Well, I know that you know what to be at home means, but also to be at home means to feel very comfortable. So that's what it means here. As she was not among people, she was not with people that she felt very comfortable with. So Davy didn't feel like she was enjoying this party. She didn't feel comfortable. She wasn't at home. I was almost glad to hear that she was going away within a few days, though I was sorry at the prospect of parting from her again so soon. This caused me to remain until the company were gone. Conversing with her, hearing her sing, was such a delightful reminder to me of my happy life and the grave old house she had made so beautiful that I could have remained there half the night. But having no excuse for staying any longer when the lights of Mr. Waterbrook's society were all snuffed out, I better show you a picture of this. Well, before electricity, everything was lit by candles. And when you wanted to extinguish the flame, you use this thing here. This is a candle snuffer. So you put that over the candle and you snuff out the fire. So that's what that means when he says the light was all snuffed out. They had extinguished all of the candles. Having no excuse for staying any longer, when the lights of Mr. Waterbrook's society were all snuffed out, I took my leave. That means I said goodbye. Very much against my inclination. That means I didn't want to. I didn't want to say goodbye. I felt then, more than ever, that she was my better angel. And if I had thought of her sweet face and placid smile, placid means calm, as though they had shone on me from some removed being like an angel, I hope I thought no harm. I have said that the company were all gone, but I ought to have expected Uriah, whom I don't include in that nomination, and who had never ceased to hover near us, so he's always standing right over them. He was close behind me when I went downstairs. He was close beside me when I walked away from the house, slowly fitting his long skeleton fingers into the still longer fingers of a great Guy Fawkes pair of gloves. It was in no disposition for Uriah's company, but in remembrance of the entreaty, of Agnes had made earlier, that I asked him if he would come home to my rooms and have some coffee. "Oh, really, Mr. Copperfield?" he rejoined. "I beg your pardon, Mr. Copperfield, but the other comes so natural. I don't like you should put a constraint upon yourself, to ask a humble person like me to your house." So he's saying, "You're inviting me for coffee? Oh, I can't believe it. I can't accept it because you're so high and I'm so low." He always does that. That's why they hate him so much. He's so annoying. "There's no constraint in this case," said I. "Will you come?" "I should like to very much," replied Uriah with a writhe. "I should like to very much." Well then, come along," said I. I could not help being rather short with him. That means a little bit rude. So he's like, "Well, come on then. Stop talking and let's go." I could not help being rather short with him, but he appeared not to mind it. We went the nearest way, without conversing much upon the road, and he was so humble in respect of those scarecrow gloves that he was still putting them on, and seemed to have made no advance in the labor when we got to my place. So it seemed like the entire time that they were walking, he was trying to put on these big gloves that he had. Scarecrow. Do you know what a scarecrow is? I can imagine what scarecrow gloves are. Let me see. Let's look at a picture of a scarecrow. This is a scarecrow. But scarecrow gloves, let's see. I already imagine what they look like. Like big and... Well, I didn't imagine this. I just thought that maybe they would be very big and long, like maybe up to the arms. So not just gloves that come up to here, but very big, ridiculous gloves. But these are all just like scary movie gloves, not real scarecrow gloves. Not that I know what scarecrow gloves are. I led him up the dark stairs to prevent his knocking his head against anything. So Davy was making him be very careful going up the stairs so he wouldn't hit his head on the ceiling. And really his damp, cold hand felt like some frog in mine. Felt so like a frog in mine. So Davy is taking him by the hand up the stairs, but it felt like a frog. It felt like his hands were like a frog. and I was tempted to drop it and run away. Agnes and hospitality prevailed. However, and I conducted him to my fireside. When I lighted my candles, he fell into meek transports with the room that was revealed to him. And when I heated the coffee in an unassuming block tin vessel, in which Mrs. Krupp delighted to prepare it, chiefly, I believe, because it was not intended for the purpose, being a shaving pot, but because there was a patent invention of great price moldering away in the pantry. Okay, that's a little bit weird. He professed so much emotion that I could joyfully have scolded him. Okay, so Davy says that he's using the teapot, which is unassuming. And if something is unassuming, that means it's very plain and simple. It's nothing wonderful or amazing. An unassuming teapot, it's just a boring old teapot. But Uriah is so annoying. He was saying, "Oh, what a marvelous, beautiful teapot." And Davy was so annoyed with it. He's saying, I could have scolded him. To scold someone, or to be scolded, is to be burned with water, like boiling water. So if you have a pot of boiling water and you dump it on your arm, that would be scalding hot, and you would scald your arm with the water. So you can imagine Uriah, "Oh, what a beautiful teapot. That's an amazing teapot." And Davy just wanted to take the hot water and throw it at him. So he says, I could have joyfully scolded him. "Oh, really, Master Copperfield, I mean Mr. Copperfield," said Uriah, "to see you waiting upon me is what I never could have expected. But one way and another, so many things happen to me which I never could have expected, I'm sure, in my humble station, that it seems to rain blessings on my head." So with his accent, he doesn't pronounce H's. So in my humble station, it seems to rain blessings on my head. So he's just saying, I can't believe that you're serving me tea because I'm so low and you're so high. I could never imagine that. But there are so many things happening to me that are so incredible right now that it's just crazy. "You have heard something, I dare say, of the exchange in my of a change in my expectations, Master Copperfield. I should say, Mr. Copperfield." As he said, so he's saying, "Did you hear about my promotion?" As he sat on my sofa with his long knees drawn up under his coffee cup, his hat and gloves upon the ground close to him, his spoon going softly round and round, his shadowless red eyes, which looked as if they had scorched their lashes off, turned towards me without looking at me, the disagreeable dints I have formerly described in his nostrils coming and going with his breath. So his nostrils move. I don't know if you can see that. His nostrils move when he breathes. Can you see what I'm doing? He's just a really weird, annoying guy. Let's read that again. The disagreeable dints I have formerly described in his nostrils coming and going with his breath, and his snaky undulation pervading his frame from his chin to his boots. I decided in my own mind that I disliked him intensely. It made me very uncomfortable to have him for a guest, for I was young then and unused to disguise what I so strongly felt. So Davy's having a hard time hiding how much he hates Uriah. I don't know why he invited him over. You've heard something, I dare say, of the change in my expectations, Master Copperfield? I should say, Mr. Copperfield, observed Uriah. Yes, said I, something. Ah, I thought Miss Agnes would know of it. He quietly returned. I'm glad to find Miss Agnes knows of it. Oh, thank you, Mr. Copperfield. I could have thrown my bootjack at him. It lay ready on the rug for having entrapped me into this disclosure of anything concerning Agnes, however immaterial, but I only drank my coffee. So he doesn't even like Uriah to mention Agnes's name. What a prophet you have shown yourself, Mr. Copperfield, pursued Uriah. Dear me, what a prophet you have proved yourself to be. A prophet is a religious figure who can predict the future, who tells the future. And so Uriah is saying, oh, you're a prophet. Because when Davy was very young, when he was just a little boy, and he first went to stay at Agnes's house, he was talking to Uriah Heep, and he was saying, oh, maybe one day you'll have your own business. You'll be a very important lawyer. And at that time, that's like 10 years ago, Uriah was saying, oh, no, not me. I'm too humble. I would never try to be something that big. And now Uriah is saying, you're a prophet. You can predict the future. What a prophet you have shown yourself, Mr. Copperfield, pursued Uriah. Dear me, what a prophet you have proved yourself to be. Don't you remember saying to me once that perhaps I should be a partner in Mr. Wickfield's business, and perhaps it might be Wickfield and Heep? You may not recollect it, but when a person is humble, Master Copperfield, a person treasures such things up. So that was a treasure to him when he said that. I recollect talking about it, said I, though I certainly did not think it very likely then. Oh, that's not very nice. Oh, who would have thought it likely, Mr. Copperfield, returned Uriah enthusiastically. I'm sure I didn't myself. I recollect saying with my own lips that I was much too humble, so I considered myself really and truly. He sat with that carved grin on his face, looking at the fire as I looked at him. But the humblest persons, Master Copperfield, he presently resumed, may be the instruments of good. I am glad to think I have been the instrument of good to Mr. Wickfield, and that I may be more so. Of what a worthy man he is, Mr. Copperfield, but how imprudent he has been. Now, to be prudent, that means to exercise good judgment. To be imprudent means exercise bad judgment. So he's saying that Mr. Wickfield exercises bad judgment. He doesn't make good decisions. I'm sorry to hear it, said I. I could not help adding, rather pointedly, on all accounts. Decidedly so, Mr. Copperfield. Oh, so Davy's really insulting him here. He's being very mean. So Uriah says, oh, he's been very imprudent. And Uriah is talking about the way that he's handling his business. And so Uriah is helping him fix problems. And Davy says, you're right. He does make bad decisions on everything, meaning on promoting, giving Uriah this big promotion. That's not very nice. Decidedly so, Mr. Copperfield, replied Uriah. On all accounts. Miss Agnes's above all. You don't remember your own eloquent expressions, Master Copperfield, but I remember how you said one day that everybody must admire her, and how I thanked you for it. You have forgot that, I have no doubt, Master Copperfield. No, said I dryly. Oh, how glad I am that you have not, exclaimed Uriah. To think that you should be the first to kindle the sparks of ambition in my humble breast, and that you have not forgot it. Oh, would you excuse me asking for a cup more coffee? Something in the emphasis he laid upon the kindling of those sparks. So kindling is like the starting of a fire. Kindling. What kind of pictures do we get with kindling? So when you're starting a fire, you usually start with very small pieces like this because it's easier to make a fire with those than the bigger pieces. And that's called kindling because that's how you start a fire. And you see this person is kindling a fire. They're getting the fire started. How are we using it here? Let's see. To think that you should be the first to kindle the sparks of ambition in my humble breast. So when Davy was a young boy and said, oh, maybe one day you'll be an important lawyer, that was kindling a fire. This is your breast here. That's where your heart is. Your breast is this area. Kindling a fire in his breast, starting that fire to be ambitious, to have goals. But Davy was very uncomfortable about the way he said it because it sounded like maybe he was talking about something else. Something in the emphasis he laid upon the kindling of those sparks, and something in the glance that he directed at me as he said it, had made me start. Remember, start means it got his attention. It surprised him. As if I had seen him illuminated by a blaze of light. Recalled by his request, preferred in quite another tone of voice, I did the honors of the shaving pot, but I did them with an unsteadiness of hand, a sudden sense of being no match for him, and perplexed. Perplexed means confused. And a perplexed, suspicious anxiety as what he might be going to say next, which I felt could not escape his observation. So suddenly Davy feels very uncomfortable. And Uriah notices this also. He said nothing at all. He stirred his coffee. This is stirring. He stirred his coffee round and round. He sipped it. That's sipping coffee. Not drinking it, but just sipping it. He felt his chin softly with his grisly hand. He looked at the fire. He looked about the room. He gasped rather than smiled at me. Gasped. That's gasping. He writhed and undulated. Those are similar words. About. In his deferential servility, he stirred and sipped again. But he left the renewal of the conversation to me. So he didn't say anything else. He was waiting for Davy to ask him questions. So Mr. Wickfield, said I at last, who is worth 500 of you, or me, for my life, I think, I could not have helped dividing the part of that sentence with an awkward jerk, has been imprudent, has he, Mr. Heap? Oh, very imprudent indeed, Master Copperfield, returned Uriah, sighing modestly. Remember, imprudent means he's making bad decisions. He's using bad judgment. Oh yes, he has used very bad judgment. Oh, very much so. But I wish you'd call me Uriah, if you please. It's like old times. Well, Uriah, said I, bolting out with some difficulty. Thank you, he returned with fervor. Thank you, Master Copperfield. It's like the blowing of old breezes, or the ringing of the bellses you hear, or the ringing of the bellses to hear you say Uriah. I beg your pardon. Was I making any observation? About Mr. Wickfield, I suggested. Oh yes, truly, said Uriah. Ah, great imprudence, Master Copperfield. It's a topic that I wouldn't touch upon to any soul but you. So he's saying, I wouldn't tell any other person except maybe you. Even to you, I can only touch upon it, meaning even to you, I can only tell you a little bit of information and no more. Actually, I think that's a pretty good phrasal verb, touch upon. I want to put that on my list. Let me see if I can find my... Oh, where did it go? I just have to remember to make a video practicing that phrasal verb. That's an interesting one. Okay, so even to you I can only touch upon it and no more. If anyone else had been in my place during the last few years by this time, he would have had Mr. Wickfield. Oh, what a worthy man he is, Master Copperfield, too. Under his thumb. If you are under someone's thumb, you are under their control. So he's saying if somebody else were working with him, they would have seen what he did, and they would have used that information to control him, to put them under their thumb. Under his thumb, said Uriah very slowly, as he stretched out his cruel-looking hand above my table and pressed his own thumb upon it, until it shook, and shook the room. If I had been obliged to look at him with him splay foot on Mr. Wickfield's head, I think I could have scarcely hated him more. Oh dear, yes, Master Copperfield, he proceeded in a soft voice, most remarkably contrasting with the action of his thumb, which did not diminish its hard pressure. So he's pressing his thumb on the table really hard. But he's very calm. Oh yes, under their thumb. I don't know what at all. Oh wait. There would have been loss, disgrace, I don't know what at all. Mr. Wickfield knows it. I am the humble instrument of humbly serving him, and he puts me on an eminence I hardly could have hoped to reach. How thankful I should be, with his face turned towards me as he finished, but without looking at me. He took his crooked thumb off the spot where he had planted it, and slowly and thoughtfully scraped his lank jaw with it, as if he were shaving himself. I recollect well how indignantly my heart beat, so how full of anger and outrage, as I saw his crafty face with the appropriately red light of the fire upon it, preparing for something else. Master Copperfield, he began, but I'm keeping you up. You're not keeping me up. I generally go to bed late. Thank you, Master Copperfield. I have risen from my humble station since first you used to address me, it is true. But I am still humble. I am humble still. I hope I never shall be otherwise than humble. You will not think the worse of my humbleness if I make a little confidence to you, if I share a little secret with you, Master Copperfield, will you? Oh, no, said I with an effort. Thank you. He took out his pocket handkerchief and began wiping the palms of his hand. Miss Agnes, Master Copperfield. Well, Uriah? Oh, how pleasant to be called Uriah spontaneously, he cried, and gave himself a jerk like a convulsive fish. Oh, how pleasant to be called Uriah spontaneously. You thought her looking very beautiful tonight, Master Copperfield? I thought her looking as she always does, superior in all respects to everyone around her, I returned. Oh, thank you, it's so true, he cried. Oh, thank you very much for that. Not at all, I said loftily. There's no reason why you should thank me. So he's saying thank you for saying Agnes is so beautiful. And Davy's like, why are you saying thank you? Why, that, Master Copperfield, said Uriah, is in fact the confidence that I'm going to take the liberty of reposing. So he's saying that's the secret I'm going to share with you. Humble as I am, he wiped his hands harder and looked at them at the fire by turns. Humble as my mother is, and lowly as our poor but honest roof has ever been, the image of Miss Agnes. I don't mind trusting you with my secret, Master Copperfield, for I have always overflowed towards you since the first moment I had the pleasure of beholding you in a pony shay. I don't know what a pony shay is, but I'm not going to look it up. It's not important. I don't think people... Something old. Has been in my breast for years. Oh, Master Copperfield, with that pure affection do I love the ground my Agnes walks on. Uh-oh. Uriah's in love with Agnes. I believe I had a delirious idea of seizing a red-hot poker out of the fire and running him through with it. We better look at poker. Let's see, red-hot poker. Red-hot poker. Oh my gosh, that's the name of a flower. I better put the word iron. It's just something you use for a fire. Well, a poker is something you use for a fire, and it becomes red hot if you keep it in the fire. So this is red hot. A red hot poker. So when he said my Agnes, that made Davy so angry he wanted to take a poker from the fire and stab him with it. I believe I had the delirious idea of seizing a red-hot poker out of the fire and running him through with it. It went from me with a shock, like a ball fired from a rifle. But the image of Agnes, outraged by so much as a thought of his red-headed animals, remained in my mind when I looked at him, sitting all awry as if his mean soul griped his body and made me giddy. He seemed to swell and grow before my eyes. The room seemed full of echoes of his voice, and the strange feeling to which perhaps no one is quite a stranger, that all this had occurred to me before at some indefinite time, and that I knew what he was going to say next, took possession of me. A timely observation of the sense of power that there was in his face. So suddenly this creepy guy suddenly looks very powerful. He's got some power over Agnes's father. A timely observation of the sense of power that there was in his face did more to bring back my remembrance of the entreaty of Agnes. So earlier that day, Agnes was saying, no matter what, you have to be kind and nice and polite to Uriah Heep. And he promised. Now he's remembering that he promised to be nice. In its full force than any effort I could have made, I asked him with a better appearance of composure. Composure is how you look. So if you have a good composure, you're not really showing any emotion. If you lose your composure, that means like becoming angry and showing your anger. So to hold your composure, to keep your composure, means to not show any emotion. Or not to show any anger or negative emotion. I asked him with a better appearance of composure than I could have thought possible a minute before, whether he had made his feelings known to Agnes. "Oh, no, Mr. Copperfield," he returned. "Oh, dear, no. Not to anyone but you. You see, I am only just emerging from my lowly station. I rest a good deal of hope on her observing how useful I am to her father. For I trust to be very useful to him indeed, Master Copperfield. And how I smooth the way for him and keep him straight. So she's so much attached to her father, Master Copperfield. Oh, what a lovely thing it is in a daughter, that I think she may come on his account to be kind to me." I fathomed, that means I understood. I fathomed the depth of the rascal's whole scheme and understood why he laid it bare. So I got the idea of what he was doing. I finally understood what he was doing. And then suddenly I saw a complete big picture. He wasn't just trying to get a promotion. He had a whole plan for his life. First get the promotion from the father, and then get Agnes. If you'll have the goodness to keep my secret, Master Copperfield, he pursued, and not, in general, to go against me, I shall take it as a particular favor. You wouldn't wish to make unpleasantness. I know what a friendly heart you've got. But having only known me on my humble footing, on my humblest, I should say, for I am very humble still, you might be unbeknown go against me rather with my Agnes. I call her mine, you see, Master Copperfield. There's a song that says, I'd crowns resign to call her mine. I hope to do it one of these days. Dear Agnes, so much too loving and too good for anyone that I could think of. Was it possible that she was reserved to be the wife of this wretch, of a wretch as this? There's no hurry at present, you know, Master Copperfield, Uriah proceeded with his slimy way, as I sat gazing at him. With this thought in my mind, my Agnes is very young still, and Mother and me will have to work our way upwards to make good many new arrangements before it would be quite convenient. So I shall have time gradually to make her familiar with my hopes, as opportunities offer. Oh, I'm so much obliged to you for this confidence. Oh, it's such a relief, you can think, to know that you understand our situation, and are certain, as you wouldn't wish to make unpleasantness in the family, not to go against me. He took the hand which I dared not withhold, and having given it a damp squeeze, referred to his pale-faced watch. Dear me, he said, it's past 1. The moments slip away. The moments slip away so. In the confidence of old times, Master Copperfield, that is almost 1:30. So it's 1:30 in the morning. I answered that I thought it was later. Not that I had really thought so, but because my conversational powers were effectually scattered. Dear me, said Considering, the house that I am stopping at, a sort of private hotel and boarding house, Master Copperfield, near the New River Ed, will have gone to bed these 2 hours. I'm sorry, I returned. There's only one bed here, and that Oh, don't think of mentioning beds, Master Copperfield, he rejoined ecstatically, drawing up one leg. But would you have any objection to my laying down here before the fire? So, Uriah is staying at like a hotel, and he won't be able to get into the hotel because everyone's asleep now and the doors are locked. So he wants to spend the night at Davy's. And Davy says, no, I only have one bed, sorry. And he says, no, that's okay. I can just lay on the floor in front of the fire. If it comes to that, I said, pray take my bed, and I'll lie down before the fire. His repudiation of this offer was almost shrill enough, in the excess of its surprise and humility, to have penetrated the ears of Mrs. Crupp, then sleeping. I suppose in a distant chamber, situated at about the level of the lower water-mark, soothed in her slumbers by the ticking of an incorrigible clock, to which she always referred me, when we had any little difference on the score of punctuality, on which was never less than 3/4 of an hour too slow, and had always been put right in the morning by the best authorities. As no arguments I could urge, in my bewildered condition, had the least effect upon his modesty in inducing him to accept my bedroom, I was obliged to make the best arrangements I could for his repose before the fire. The mattress of the sofa, which was a great deal too short for his lank figure, the sofa pillows, a blanket, the table cover, a clean breakfast cloth, and a great coat made him a bed and covering, for which he was more than thankful, having lent him a nightcap, which he put on at once, and in which he made such an awful figure that I have never worn one since I left him to his rest. I never shall forget that night. I never shall forget how I turned and tumbled, how I wearied myself with thinking about Agnes and this creature, how I considered what could I do, and what ought I to do. How could I come to no other conclusion than the best course for her peace was to do nothing, and to keep myself what I had heard, if I went to sleep for a few minutes, the image of Agnes with her tender eyes, and of her father looking fondly on her, as I had so often seen him look, arose before me with appealing faces, and filled me with vague terrors. When I awoke, the recollection that Uriah was lying in the next room sat heavy on me like a waking nightmare. So when he woke up in the morning, for a minute, it was just normal. And then he thought, oh no, Uriah's on the floor of the next room. Ugh. And oppressed me with a leaden dread, as if I had some meaner quality of devil for a lodger. The poker got into my dozing thoughts besides, and wouldn't come out. So he's still thinking, I could just kill him with the poker. I thought between sleeping and waking that it was still red hot, and that if I had snatched it out of the fire and run him through the body. I was so haunted at last by the idea, though I knew there was nothing in it. So he was really thinking about it, but he knew he wasn't actually going to kill Uriah. That I stole into the next room to look at him, and there I saw him, lying in his back with his legs extending to I don't know where. Gurgling is... Wait, can I do a gurgle with my tea? That's gurgling. So he's sleeping, but you can hear this gurgling noise. Where did that word go? Gurglings taking place in his throat, stoppages in his nose, ew, and his mouth open like a post office. He was so much worse in reality, in my distempered fancy, and afterwards I was attracted to him in very repulsion, and could not help wandering in and out every half hour or so, and taking another look at him. So Davy is so disgusted by Uriah Heep that every half hour he goes out of his room and looks at him again and says, ugh, and goes back in to his room. Still the long, long night seemed heavy and hopeless as ever, and no promise of day was in the murky sky. So the night just seemed to go on forever. When I saw him going downstairs early in the morning, for thank heaven he would not stay for breakfast, it appeared to me as if the night was going away in his person. And when I went out to the commons, I charged Mrs. Krupp with particular directions to leave the windows open. So when Davy was leaving in the morning, he told the landlady, open my windows to bring fresh air into the room. And that my sitting room might be aired and purged of his presence. Okay. Well, that was the end of chapter 25 of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. So next time we will look at chapter 26, which is I Fall into Captivity. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all of your questions and comments. And I hope you return when I do chapter 26, Falling into Captivity. Have a good night. Goodbye.